You won't believe what happened the day I looked out my cabin window and saw a group of strangers spreading picnic blankets and setting up tables on my property like it was some public park. At first, I thought maybe some lost hikers had wandered too far and stopped for a quick rest, but then I noticed coolers, folding chairs, balloons, a loudspeaker, and even a huge banner being stretched between two pine trees. The banner had the bold letters, HOA Summer Picnic, written across it. My stomach dropped, because I knew exactly what this meant. It was them. The HOA. And not just any HOA, this was the one run by none other than Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood, the woman who thought she could control everything and everyone, even if it didn't belong to her. And now she was standing on my land, barking orders like a general commanding her troops. I rubbed my temples, trying to calm down, but the sight was too much. She had a whistle around her neck and was telling people where to put the grills and how to arrange the food tables, like she had been planning this for weeks. I stepped out onto my porch and called out, "Hey! What do you all think you're doing?" My voice carried across the clearing, and dozens of heads turned, but only one person had the nerve to answer. Karen. She spun around, wearing her oversized sun hat, her sunglasses perched halfway down her nose, and that smug little smile she always wore when she thought she was in charge. "Oh, don't worry," she shouted back, waving her hand like I was some distant farmer she barely acknowledged. "This is community property now. We're holding our annual summer picnic here. You should be grateful we're making use of it instead of letting it go to waste." I blinked, not sure if I had heard her correctly. "Community property?" I repeated. "Lady, this is my private land. You're trespassing." Karen gave me that condescending smirk she had mastered over the years. "Oh, stop being so uptight. It's just a picnic. You never use this land anyway, so why not let the community enjoy it? We'll be gone by evening." She actually turned her back to me as if the matter was settled, as if my ownership didn't matter at all. That was the last straw. I walked down the steps of my porch and across the grass, stopping just short of the crowd that was now staring at me like I was the intruder. "Listen carefully," I said, trying to keep my voice calm but firm. "This land is mine. You didn't ask permission, and you don't have the right to be here. Pack up and leave before things get complicated." But Karen wasn't about to back down. She crossed her arms, her sunglasses glinting in the sunlight. "You can't stop us. This neighborhood needs a place to gather, and your field is perfect. Besides, you can't possibly enforce this. What are you going to do, call the cops because we're having a barbecue?" Laughter rippled through the group, and I could see the confidence in their faces. They believed her. They thought they could just take over my land and walk away without consequences. What Karen didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this land wasn't just any ordinary property. It had a very unique feature, one that I had invested years of effort, paperwork, and legal battles into. I was a licensed caretaker for 2 grizzly bears. Yes, you heard that right. Rocky and Thunder, 2 massive, powerful grizzlies, lived in a secured enclosure deeper in the woods, and they were very much a part of my daily life. I had raised them under strict state permits, ensuring their care was legal, humane, and safe. They weren't pets, they were wild animals, but they trusted me, and I provided for them. And while my bears were perfectly content in their space, the last thing I ever wanted was a group of trespassers setting up a noisy picnic dangerously close to their territory. Karen had completely ignored the bright yellow signs posted around the perimeter that clearly said, "Private property," and, "Warning, Wildlife Area." Either she thought they were fake, or she didn't bother to read them. Either way, she had led her entire HOA straight into a situation she couldn't possibly control. I looked around at the spread they had laid out, the grills already smoking, kids running around with frisbees, people laughing like they were in some public park, and I knew something had to be done. But instead of raising my voice again, I decided to give Karen one last chance to realize what she was doing. "You might want to pack up before my neighbors arrive," I said calmly, tilting my head toward the tree line. She frowned, confused, then let out a dismissive laugh. "What neighbors? There's no one out here but you. Don't try to scare us." Her voice dripped with arrogance, and several people chuckled along with her. She thought I was bluffing. But if she only knew who, or rather, what, my neighbors were, she wouldn't be laughing. I gave her a long look, shook my head, and turned back toward my cabin porch. If she wanted to test me, then she was about to learn a lesson she would never forget. I sat down on my rocking chair, sipping my iced tea, and watched them continue setting up like nothing had happened. They had no clue the danger they were putting themselves in. They thought I was some grumpy old landowner they could push around. But the truth was, they were guests on my land without permission, and very soon, they were going to regret it. Karen strutted across the clearing, checking on the grill, chatting with her HOA friends, even bragging about how she had secured the perfect spot for their picnic. Her confidence only grew, and with every laugh and every cheer, I could feel my patience wearing thinner. Deep down, though, I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just waiting. Because I knew Rocky and Thunder would wake up from their midday nap soon enough, and when they did, this community picnic was going to turn into something else entirely. By the time the sun hit its peak and the heat shimmered across the open field, the HOA picnic was in full swing like it was some county fair. Children were darting around with water balloons, women were chatting loudly as they unpacked sandwiches and pasta salad, and men were clustered near the grills, flipping burgers and sipping on cans of soda. From my porch, I could smell the charcoal smoke mixing with the sweetness of barbecue sauce drifting through the air. It was the kind of scene you'd expect to see at a park or maybe a family reunion, but not on my land, not in the middle of my ranch where trespassing signs were nailed on every post. Karen was front and center, of course, walking around with her clipboard, blowing her whistle now and then, as if she was running a boot camp. Every time she spotted me watching, she gave me that smug look, like she'd already won, like she thought I was powerless against her little army of picnic-goers. But I knew something she didn't. The woods behind my cabin aren't just ordinary woods. That's the home of Rocky and Thunder, my two massive grizzly bears. They'd been asleep for most of the morning in their enclosure, but I knew by mid-afternoon, they'd be up and moving, hungry and curious. It wasn't unusual for them to wander close to the clearing looking for snacks, and today, thanks to Karen's little picnic stunt, there were more snacks than ever. I tried to give her a chance earlier, but she laughed me off. Now the situation was out of my hands, because no matter how much control I had over Rocky and Thunder, they were still bears. And bears don't exactly take kindly to strangers stomping around their territory. I sat back in my chair, sipping the last of my iced tea, when I heard it, the low, rumbling growl echoing from the tree line. At first, it was faint, but it grew louder, rolling across the clearing like distant thunder. My lips curled into a smile. Right on time. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, as the first wave of silence swept across the picnic. A little boy holding a popsicle froze mid-bite, staring at the dark shadows between the trees. "Mom," he whispered, his voice trembling. "There's something there." His mom laughed nervously, brushing him off, but then came the snapping of branches, the heavy thud of paws against earth, and all at once, the first massive shape emerged. Rocky stepped out of the trees like a king entering his kingdom. His fur was thick and golden brown, his shoulders rippling with muscle as he lumbered into the sunlight. Gasps filled the clearing. People dropped their hot dogs, their laughter vanishing in an instant. Rocky sniffed the air, his nose twitching as he caught the scent of burgers and watermelon, and he let out another deep growl that rattled the ground. A little girl screamed, pointing at him, and chaos erupted. "Bear! Bear!" Before anyone could process what was happening, the second figure emerged. Thunder, larger and darker, his fur a deep chocolate brown, his head swinging side to side as he walked slowly toward the crowd. Together, the two grizzlies looked like something out of a wildlife documentary, except this wasn't television. This was real, and they were less than 50 feet away from the picnic tables. The HOA's carefully planned event collapsed in seconds. People screamed and bolted in every direction. Plates crashed to the ground, coolers toppled, and chairs flipped over as folks scrambled for safety. Balloons popped one after another as children tripped over them, crying and clutching their parents. Burgers rolled into the dirt, sodas spilled across the grass, and the smell of food only lured the bears closer. Karen tried to hold her ground at first, because of course she did. "Everyone stay calm," she shouted, blowing her whistle like it was going to stop 2 half-ton grizzlies. Her voice cracked, her hands shaking as she waved her arms in the air. "They won't hurt you if you don't panic." But then thunder let out a roar so loud it shook the leaves off the branches, and Karen's face drained of color. She dropped the whistle, let out her own high-pitched shriek, and sprinted for the nearest cooler like it was going to protect her. The bears, meanwhile, weren't even being aggressive. To them, it was just an exciting surprise. They sniffed the ground, pawed at the fallen food, and swiped lazily at the tables, sending them crashing over with all the hot dogs and potato chips spilling out. Rocky grabbed a watermelon in his jaws and crushed it in a single bite, juice dripping from his mouth. Thunder nosed at a cooler, popping it open with ease, and started licking up the spilled ice and soda. To them, this was heaven. From my porch, I stood up slowly and walked toward them, whistling low and steady. "Here, boys," I called out. Rocky lifted his head, ears twitching, and ambled toward me with chunks of watermelon still stuck to his fur. Thunder followed, dragging a plastic bag of chips in his mouth. The crowd froze, staring in shock as the bears obeyed me like 2 oversized dogs. Karen, still catching her breath, clutched her purse to her chest and screamed, You can't have bears here. That's illegal. That's dangerous. You endangered us all." Her voice cracked, part rage and part fear, but I couldn't help laughing. "Illegal?" I said calmly, patting Rocky's massive shoulder as he reached me. "These bears are fully licensed and registered. They're legal residents of this land. You know what isn't legal? You setting up camp on my private property." Her jaw dropped, her face flushed red, and she began fumbling with her phone, her hands shaking so hard she almost dropped it. "I'm calling the cops," she screeched. "You'll be shut down for this. Just wait until they hear you've got wild animals roaming free." She thought she had the upper hand again, thought the law would come running to her side like always. But what she didn't know was that the law already knew about Rocky and Thunder. The sheriff himself had visited plenty of times, checking my permits and even snapping photos of the bears to show his kids. Karen was about to walk right into the most humiliating moment of her life. Around us, the HOA members were still trying to gather themselves. Some were crying, some were staring wide-eyed, and others were huddled together in total disbelief. The picnic was ruined, the tables destroyed, the food gone, and their queen Karen was trembling with fury, desperately trying to regain control of a situation that had slipped so far out of her hands it wasn't even funny. The bears, on the other hand, were calm as ever, sitting down at my feet like overgrown pets, licking watermelon juice and soda from their fur. I looked at Karen and said, "You wanted community property? Well, welcome to my community. Rocky and Thunder are the only HOA around here, and they don't like uninvited guests." The sound of sirens echoed faintly in the distance, and I knew Karen had managed to get through to 911, though the way she'd screamed into her phone, I bet the dispatcher thought there was a bear attack. The HOA crowd was a mess, half of them huddled in their cars, some still too shaken to even start their engines, others standing far back near the edge of the clearing like they were waiting for a miracle. Rocky and Thunder, meanwhile, were the picture of calm. Rocky had stretched out on the grass with a half-eaten bag of hot dog buns between his paws, while Thunder was busy pawing through the remains of a cooler, licking soda off his claws like it was candy. To anyone else, the scene might have looked terrifying, but to me, it was just another afternoon on the ranch. Karen, however, wasn't taking it well. She was pacing back and forth, her wide-brimmed hat tilted awkwardly, hair sticking to her sweaty forehead, phone clutched to her ear even though the call was clearly over. She kept repeating, "He's got wild animals. He's endangering us. He's insane." Her voice cracked with every sentence, and the more she talked, the more ridiculous she sounded. I couldn't help shaking my head. "Karen," I called out, my tone calm, almost amused. "You've already embarrassed yourself enough for one day. Why don't you take your HOA and leave before this gets any worse?" But Karen was never one to back down gracefully. She spun around, pointing a trembling finger at me, her face red with fury. "Worse? Oh, it's going to get worse. When the sheriff gets here, you'll be the one in handcuffs, not me." Her words barely left her mouth when the first sheriff's truck pulled into the clearing, lights flashing. A second one followed right behind, dust swirling in the air as the deputies stepped out, hands resting on their belts but not rushing to pull weapons. They'd been here before. They knew what to expect. "Afternoon, Jim," Deputy Harris called out as he approached, his voice steady, almost casual. He glanced at Rocky and Thunder lounging by my side, then let out a chuckle. "Looks like your boys found the buffet." His partner grinned, shaking his head as he surveyed the chaos of toppled tables, spilled food, and terrified HOA members scattered around like sheep after a storm. Karen came running up, nearly tripping over her own feet in her haste. "Arrest him," she shrieked, pointing at me like a prosecutor delivering a final verdict. "He's keeping wild animals. He put us all in danger. He let those things out to attack us." Her words tumbled out so fast she was practically spitting. The deputies exchanged glances, then looked back at me. I shrugged, patting Rocky's thick fur as he let out a low, contented grunt. "Ma'am," Deputy Harris said slowly, his tone the same one you'd use with an unruly child, "these bears are licensed and fully permitted. Jim here has all the paperwork, and we've checked it plenty of times. There's no crime in what he's doing." Karen's jaw dropped, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "What? That's impossible. You can't just, he can't, this is insane," she sputtered, looking around at the deputies like she expected one of them to agree with her. None did. "What is illegal," Harris continued, his voice firming now, "is trespassing on private property. And from what I can see, you and your entire group here are guilty of that." His words sliced through the clearing like a knife, and the murmurs from the HOA crowd grew louder. Some shifted uncomfortably, others avoided looking at me, and a few began packing up what little remained of their picnic gear without being told. Karen's face turned crimson. "No. This is community land. We had the right to be here," she shouted, but her voice shook, the conviction slipping away. Harris shook his head. "Ma'am, this land has never been community property. It belongs to Jim. Always has. You brought your people here without permission, and you put them right in the middle of a wildlife zone after ignoring all the posted signs. You're lucky nobody got hurt." Her scream of frustration was almost comical, but she wasn't finished yet. She jabbed a finger toward Rocky and Thunder, her voice cracking. "Then at least arrest him for negligence. Look at them. They're monsters. They could have killed someone." Harris looked at the bears, then back at me, and burst out laughing. "Negligence? Lady, these boys are calmer than half the dogs in this county. They're sitting right there minding their business, and if I'm not mistaken, the only people causing a disturbance today are you and your HOA." The deputy's words sealed Karen's humiliation. Her knees seemed to buckle, and she staggered back, clutching her purse like it was the only thing holding her together. Around her, the HOA members had gone completely quiet, their eyes wide as they realized just how badly this had backfired. Some whispered among themselves, shooting Karen glares that said everything. They blamed her for dragging them into this mess. I folded my arms, enjoying the show. "So, officers," I said casually, should I go ahead and file charges for trespassing? Or do you think the public humiliation's punishment enough? Harris smirked. That's up to you, Jim. But if you ask me, she's already learned her lesson. He turned back to Karen. Gather your people, pack up your trash, and don't set foot on this land again. Next time, it won't be just a warning. Karen opened her mouth to argue, but the look on Harris's face silenced her. Shoulders slumping, she turned to her HOA crew, muttering bitterly, "Fine. We're leaving." The crowd wasted no time, rushing to stuff leftover food into bags, collapse the few chairs that hadn't been trampled, and haul their gear back to their cars. The clearing looked like a war zone, paper plates and soda cans scattered everywhere, balloons half deflated, and trampled grass marking where chaos had exploded just minutes earlier. As the last car pulled out of the clearing, Karen paused, glaring at me from behind her sunglasses. Her lips twisted in a sneer. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You think you're so clever, hiding behind your animals, but one day," I cut her off with a laugh. "One day what? You'll trespass again and hope the bears are on vacation? Face it, Karen. You just learned the hard way that this isn't your HOA playground. This is my land. My rules." She didn't respond, just turned on her heel and stormed into her car, slamming the door hard enough to make her window rattle. The convoy of HOA vehicles roared away, leaving behind nothing but dust and silence. Rocky gave a low chuff, as if asking if the entertainment was over, and Thunder flopped down on the grass with a satisfied huff. The deputies lingered a moment longer, chuckling as they climbed back into their trucks. "You really do have the best security system in the county," Harris called out through his open window. I grinned, scratching behind Rocky's ear. "Better than any alarm company I could hire." With a wave, the deputies drove off, leaving me alone with my two Grizzlies and the wreckage of what had once been a proud HOA picnic. As the sun began to dip behind the trees, I gathered up what little trash was left, tossing it into a burn barrel while Rocky and Thunder lumbered back toward their enclosure, bellies full and spirits high. The clearing grew quiet again, the only sounds the rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds. I sat back down on my porch with a fresh glass of iced tea, smiling at the peace that had finally returned. From that day forward, not a single HOA member dared to step foot on my land again. Word spread fast, whispers of the Grizzly Guardians, stories of how Karen's mighty picnic had ended in disaster. Kids in the neighborhood made up legends about my property, calling it the haunted forest, the bear's kingdom, the place nobody dared to trespass. Even Karen, who once strutted like a queen, walked with her head down whenever she passed near my boundary line. And me? I enjoyed every second of it. Because sometimes, the best way to deal with trespassers isn't with fences or lawsuits. Sometimes, all you need are two loyal, legal, Grizzly neighbors who don't take kindly to uninvited guests.